that you, in one of our suits, will most likely like the way that you look.
Okay, you know what? No, cut.
You're gonna like the way you look. These opinions stated make no assurances that one person or persons may or may not like, enjoy, or harbor positive feelings towards one's physical appearance heretofore known as the way you look. No guarantees are being made throughout the known universe as... This is bullshit.
What?
This is bullshit.
We have to do it.
One guy sues because he doesn't like the way he looks, and now I gotta read this legalese nonsense. There's a chance you're gonna like the way you look, and there's a chance that you won't. It could be 50-50, but I like to think it's more like 80-20.
Okay, you know...
Are you kidding me? Let's just say I guarantee one of the following three phrases.
Today's July 6, 2017. This is the Investitute podcast. And John, I guarantee you're going to love this podcast.
I know I'm going to love it.
You know what?
Because, gosh, it's amazing the reach that the podcast, the combination of the podcast, Investitute, and CN, a stock that we were talking about yesterday, ended up being something that caused somebody to reach out to us.
Yeah. And I called him up like you asked, and I got his interview, and I'll play it right now. We have Chris Salazar on the line, who wrote an article at Seeking Alpha. He saw John on Fast Money yesterday when John and I saw activity in TLRD over at Investitute, and he wrote an article for Seeking Alpha, which I'll post in the links below. Chris, good morning. So we saw the option activity, but you wrote an article about this. Tell us what's in that article.
Sure. So I wrote an article after doing some fundamental research on Teller Brands. And based on my work, I think that the investor universe misunderstands where the true value of the business lies. And in my opinion, that value lies in the tuxedo rental service business.
Really?
When people think of Teller Brands or Men's Warehouse or Josephine Bank specifically, they think about
that guy. You're going to like the way I look. Or like the way you look or something, right?
And he's not even there anymore. So that just proves, I think, how stale some of the investor or consumer knowledge of the brands is.
That guy's not there anymore?
No, he was fired, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. And now he actually has his own online business, which I'll get to in a second. But
okay, nice tease. I like that. Okay, so go ahead. Taylor Brands. We're talking about TLRD. Got it.
So there is a general misperception. Everyone thinks of the suits. You're gonna like the way you look, but really, in my opinion, the value comes from tuxedo rentals. Why do I think that? One, they have the dominant market share in that space in the U.S. and in Canada, about a third of the market. Two, when you think about consumer demand for tuxedo rentals, the main uses are for formal affairs. So think of prom, think of weddings. And when you think of a wedding, the tuxedo rental expense as a percentage of the entire wedding is relatively minimal. So in an economic downturn, people are still getting married, and they're probably not going to cut out the cost of the tuxedo. They may cut out the cost of something else that's a little bit more over the top. And for prom, kids are still going to prom no matter if it's 2008, 2009, or years like now. So that's another key point. I think the demand is relatively inelastic. And then lastly, when you think about online competitors, so actually George Zimmer created his own online business called Generation Tux that does online-only tuxedo rentals.
Oh, really? So he's in the tux business.
So it proves the point, right? He founded the business. He knows where the value lies. He made his own online business. That being said, Generation Tux, which he founded, Black Tux, which is another large online-only tuxedo rental provider, and a couple of others, if you add them all up together, they're roughly about $25 million in annualized revenue. They're growing, but $25 million compared to Taylor Brands, close to $400 to $450 million.
That doesn't sound like much, though. 25.
No, so it's hard for them to expand. They're not making money. They don't have the actual footprint of Men's Warehouse and Josephine Bank, where if you wanted to go rent a tuxedo or matching tuxedos for your entire wedding party, you all could walk into a Men's Warehouse in several different locations. and get fitted and get the same style. So that's one advantage that TLRD Brands has over those guys.
Yeah, in one of your articles, you said that it says the company is free from headline distractions such as American Airlines and Twin Hill, the failed Macy's partnership. So, yeah, I could see the headline. I mean, I haven't seen – well, I didn't know that guy got fired. That's interesting. From
yeah, so there's been a lot of distractions, and I think they get more, FaceTime or, spotlight than what I think is truly representative of the value of the company. The Twin Hill American Airline relationship is less than 2% of the company's EBITDA. American Airlines never blamed Twin Hill, which is TLRD Brands' corporate apparel segment, for any of the issues with the actual apparel that the flight attendants and pilots were complaining about. And they were able to win another contract with McDonald's. So, obviously a large company in the midst of all that. So,
these guys are making uniforms for McDonald's and American Airlines? Is that where this comes in, the TLRD Brands thing?
Yeah, so this is a relatively small part of the business. But, yes, this business, they supply and manufacture corporate apparel. So think uniforms. So for a pilot, they'll have matching uniforms. For McDonald's, they'll have matching uniforms.
And that's what TLRD does that for the...
Yeah, so it's relatively small, though. Relatively small. Their main competitors are the much larger players in the space. In that space are Aramark and Cintas.
Okay. So now let me ask you something. I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes here before we get on the phone with John. Do you own a position in this? Did you put your money where your article is, as we might do? I haven't looked at it. I personally haven't bought any of this yet, but I'm looking at it because it's cheap enough. It's down 31 cents today. It's around $11 a share. And again, we saw some activity in it yesterday. It's 11.32. I'm not going to ask you what your cost on this. I'd hope it's a little bit cheaper. And what's your targets on this?
So my targets on the stock right now are between $20 and $30 a share. It's a large range, but a lot of that $20 I think is very achievable, but I think $30 is even more achievable. When you think about the short interest in the stock is upwards of 30%. They're trading at a very low multiple, so any multiple expansion will be hugely accretive to the stock as well. So those are things that are a little bit hard to predict how they'll play out, but I think they set up favorably for the stock.
Okay, so you're swinging for the fence. I like that. We're going to have to get you back on when, as this thing moves up, we'll definitely put it down. Right now the mark's 11.32 on it. It's down 26 cents. I might throw a couple shekels at this thing because I like the way it looks. No pun intended.
Today's a good day to add when you have a relative peer such as L Brands reporting weak results, taking down the rest of retail. That'll obviously negatively impact TLRD Brands as well. So if you can buy it on a competitor, not a competitor, but a retail peer's weak results, and I think it's a good opportunity.
Sounds good. Well, Chris, thanks a lot for listening to the podcast, and thanks for watching the show, and thanks for participating. And anybody else that wants to do this, as far as come on after we see a pick, or maybe you're a hater. I mean, if you're a TR, because they're out there, right? You have any haters that wrote a...
There's a 30% short interest, so there's definitely haters.
They're not haters until it starts moving. They won't be haters for long. All right, cool. Thanks a lot, Chris. You've been a big help, and we look forward to calling you back, hopefully when this thing hits the fences at Wrigley, when it goes over the Ivy at 20:30. Right. I don't know. At 11:31, I think at 15, I'd be out of here. But if you say 20, maybe I'll hold on to it for a little bit. All right, Chris, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So what'd you think, John?
Well, I think Chris is a smart guy. There are a lot of good authors that write for all kinds of sites. Chris is a trader, a long-short trader, as well as a writer, and did a nice job with this article. So when he reached out to us, we thought, hey, it's probably a good idea to share it with the listeners, his perspective. So I'm glad you got him on tape or on digital, I guess it is, Andrew. But I think that's a good thing because it's kind of coupling some fundamental research with, unusual activity and giving people perspective of where this company might be going.
I think it's kind of cool that we see the activity and we throw it up there, and then, of course, we look for reasons in the catalyst why, and then, of course, this guy reached out and threw up seeking offer. Yeah.
How about the short
interest?
interest?
That 30%, which is...
Yeah, that'll get your attention. I guarantee that'll get your attention. 30%. Anytime you get into double-digit short interest, it's interesting. You get into 30% kinds of numbers, and that could be just a little bit of good news can cause the stock to make an outsized move because obviously there's a lot of folks that have to cover.
Disclaimer, too, I bought some because it has a very nice Plan B. And you know what Plan B is, right? The dividend.
Well, I go to Plan Bs all the time.
I do too.
And nice 6% dividend yield. Yeah. Yeah. And just think how you against the folks. Andrew and I trade a lot of options, and we usually trade them from the long side, especially with calls. But you could do call spreads, you could sell put spreads, you could own the stock, get that 6% dividend because you own the stock, and sell calls against it and enhance the yield further. So, there's lots of ways to play, and, especially when you have a company that maybe you're thinking is due for an upside move, and you're paid to wait, as they say, with that 6% dividend, and you can sell a nice fat just out of the money call for, a nice chunk to enhance that dividend. Why not?
And apparently the guy he said during the interview, if you just listened, was that the guy that said that you're going to love the way you look, guarantee it, he got fired from the company. You know what he's doing now? He's doing his own tux company, his own online tux company. So he sees where that's going. And we talked about that yesterday too with the prom stuff.
Yeah, well, that was the guy with the what everybody always accused him of having a rug or a toupee, and he'd always look at you and say, "You're gonna love the way you look, I guarantee." But you know what? The fact that he's in the tux space, and these guys are the biggest in the tux rental business out there. Not the guy that said "I guarantee," but rather TLRD is the biggest. There's another reason to keep a watch
give it
on
a
this.
shot. Now, you were on with Fisher today. I saw he was in studio. That must have been kind of nice seeing him. We haven't seen him since our last event.
It was. Yeah, Mark is brilliant. Every time Andrew, he talks about you and you being in the hot tub.
Did he mention that again?
At the Palms. Oh, every single time he does.
Just a little backstory.
Funny, but,
do you want to tell the story
anyway.
Since the listeners might not know? We went to the Playboy.
So Mark was trading for charity, and whatever money he made trading that day, he was giving to charity.
Yes.
Very generous. And he made a lot of money trading that day, gave it to charity. It also happened to be his son's 21st birthday, Daniel. And because he did a great job in school at the University of Pennsylvania, where Mark went, and kept himself straight off of drugs and alcohol and any of the other problems young people run into sometimes at any institution of higher learning, Mark said, "Hey, you and 79 of your closest friends are going to be my guests at the Palms in Vegas." And Daniel ended up getting the Hefner suite up on the very top, the penthouse, 2-story penthouse. And it was just one of the craziest parties.
It has that
after
zero
Mark
line
finished trading, that is.
And boy, they flew him out in the jet. But they have there was a what do they call that? A zero line pool or whatever, horizon pool or infinity.
Yeah, an infinity edge pool or something.
To you, as I was drinking my 15th glass of wine, I said, if if I don't swim in this pool now, I will never swim in this pool again. So what did I do? Swam in the pool, but I didn't want to get my clothes wet. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, he didn't have a swimsuit.
And then I sat at the end of the pool and I was like creeping on the girls taking selfies. I was that old guy behind them, standing up going, ah, because they were like up to their knees in the very front, and here I was I was lurking out in the deep end of the infinity pool, naked with a glass of wine. I think I even had a cigarette in my hand because I smoked at the time, or I smoked that night. I was doing everything that night. But so Fisher still likes
crazy.
That, huh? Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
He wanted to jump in the
loves
pool.
That story. In fact, tomorrow on the podcast, I'll tell another story from that trip that doesn't involve Andrew, but it's a very fun story about what high rollers like Mark do.
And
when
you're
they're out
definitely going
there
to want to tune into this. Tune into this because these are real. These are true stories.
You'll want to hear it.
You only hear it.
This will have to be a chapter in one of our future books.
You can only hear them here on this podcast. All right.
That's right. Well, just give you one quick one, maybe two quick ones before we go, Andrew. Micron, symbol MU, and Budweiser,
what's going on
symbol
Bud?
BUD. Both of those, unusual activity today, and worth a look.
All right, so
I bought both.
We'll address some of that tomorrow.
Thanks to our buddy Chris for calling in with that story on TLRD, the former Joseph A. Bank and Men's Warehouse. And remember, folks, you can tell your friends about the podcast. It's on iTunes and YouTube. You can subscribe and get them automatically from either of those two sites. Either get an alert or the actual download, and tell a friend about it, okay?